So I've been getting a lot of questions specifically about how I heat my rooftop tent from the vlog before the last one, episode 2, part 2, or whichever one it was. Let me give you some backstory. So basically, the reason all of this started, the reason why I even started using a buddy heater to begin with, was because our very first overland trip, the first night I knew it was going to be like 30 degrees outside, and we stopped at a Walmart to pick up a heater, and I actually had brought my generator with me, my 1,000-watt generator, and I was thinking, hey, you know, I'll watch the weather, and worst case scenario, I'll just go pick up a heater and I'll plug it in. Well, it turns out that just about even the cheapest or the most expensive little heater you could buy at Walmart, it needed at least 1,500 watts of power to run it. And if my terminology isn't correct on this, forgive me, I don't know anything about electricity or how to calculate any of that stuff. But I ran some numbers and was able to figure it out, and basically was able to determine that my 1,000-watt generator wouldn't cut it, didn't matter the kind of heater. So I didn't want to get a propane heater because I was naturally worried about some off-gas issues, carbon monoxide, didn't want to die in the middle of our sleep, you know what I mean? But had done quite a bit of research and had been able to determine that the little buddy heater, which is the first one that I bought, would be suitable for indoor use. Now, I believe it says in the instructions you should ventilate or whatever, so you need to do your own independent research. Don't take whatever I'm telling you. This is just full disclosure. Don't take whatever I'm telling you to be word, right? Don't do your own independent research. I'm just telling you what I've done and my feedback. But basically, as a measure of safety, I'm getting ahead of myself, but I got a CO2 monitor. I just wanted to make sure that we weren't going to die in the middle of the night. So I got this heater. It was great for our little Oz tent, but it wasn't enough. Let me think about this. It was okay for when we had the one tent set up, but when we had the two tents set up, it wasn't enough. And I either went back to Walmart and got one, or I got one later. I don't really remember. Maybe you can tell me and watch the old vlogs. I don't remember if I even said that. But the bottom line was this: the little buddy heater wasn't enough for us. The big buddy heater has actually it's been really adequate. Okay, so what is it? Let me show you. So I've got this, and we've got the little one. The little buddy heater, basically the big difference between the two of them is the little buddy heater has one heating panel thingamajigger, and the big buddy has two heating panel thingamajiggers. The little buddy heater only has a place for one propane tank here on the side. The big buddy has a place for propane heater on either side, or propane tank on either side, so you can actually have two tanks loaded into it. The big buddy heater obviously is going to consume the propane much quicker because it's going to have, it's going to be putting out a lot more heat. It's going to burn a lot more through the panels, etc., etc., etc. The little one is what it is. I think that the big one, if you had it cranked up on high, would probably burn through the gas about the same pace as the little buddy heater would. The big buddy heater on high puts out so much heat that if you're close to it, it really is too much heat. When I put it on high in our tent at Talladega National Forest, up on top of two of my front runner boxes, on high after about 15 minutes, it was so hot up in the top part of the tent that it was unbearable. Oh man, that feels so good. Feels so good. It's cold outside. The thermometer thingamajigger on my Forerunner says it's 30 degrees outside. I've got this going. It's gonna warm it up in here. It's a lot warmer up there. Check this out. I know you're up here and all warm. I mean, I didn't have a temperature. I mean, I didn't have a thermometer, but if I had to guess, I would say at least 75 degrees, maybe even 80. It was like we could sweat ourselves out. It was that hot. All right, so how do these things work? Well, you put a propane tank in the side here, just like this, and it screws onto this little nozzle, and it's kind of nice how it kind of swivels like that. And basically, once you ignite it, it will start a pilot light down here, and I guess it dissipates propane through these panels. I think they're little ceramic panels, and it'll heat up the panels, and the propane coming through them will generate heat. So in order to get it going, you just try and get the pilot going. So you have the off, and then you push down and you twist, and you can just wait until you see the pilot come on. It's not turning, but there's always like a little trick. There we are. Maybe it takes a second. So now I've got it on low, and you can see it's now coming on. This is very, very hot right here. In fact, I'm gonna move it over here, away from the light, and a little further away from the microphone, because I have before singed my microphone from letting it get too close to heat. So now we've got a lot of heat radiating from this, and if I want to turn on the second panel and crank up the heat, I just turn that and it's going to ignite the second panel there. Let me turn off the light here, and you can kind of see the flame flickering. And if I was to leave that on for a little while, it would get very, very toasty in here. I'm not super worried about this being in here right now. It says that this is good for indoor use. I would not use it inside of a house like this. I think that people use it in workshops and garages and stuff like that. I mean, I have central heat and air, so there's no reason for me to use it in here. But if something was to happen and I needed to use it in here, I would crack some windows and make sure I've got fresh air coming. It says on the box it's good for indoor use. I would definitely ventilate whatever space you're going to be in. This next section is setup. What I did to set it up. Okay, so when I was on the trip, basically, and I got this idea from Kevin with Lifestyle Overland, he was talking about how he had the little buddy or big buddy heater, whichever one he's running, down on the bottom of the vestibule room awning thing of the tent. And obviously, as we know physics, heat rises, right? It's freaking cold outside. What do you think about our setup? It's actually nice and toasty up here. With the heater on, the heat comes up. I've got it on low. It feels very, very good up here. And so the idea behind it, and I think I mentioned this in that vlog. Got something on my mouth. I will only set up the vestibule room. Actually, I won't even necessarily set it up if it's raining, but I'll definitely only set it up if it's cold. If it's cold, I'm going to do this. This was a great idea and it really, really worked. Gave us a nice warm space to kind of get going in the morning and all that other stuff. But basically, set up the vestibule room, had the heater in there, had my propane tanks in there, and I basically set the heater up on a couple of front runner boxes, and that way it would kind of raise the heater up a little bit off the ground, and that way the heat could rise a little bit better instead of trying to fill up that whole vestibule room, because I didn't really care for that room to be heated. I wanted it to go up into the top of the tent. And you could probably augment that with a 12-volt fan or something and try and kind of keep the air circulating a little bit. But that was kind of what I wanted to do in terms of setup. The Primal Outdoors guy, I watched a video of his. What he had done is he actually used a hard surface. I don't know if it was a piece of wood or what it was. And then he put canvas on top of that, because if the thing does tip over, he didn't want it to burn whatever it toppled over onto, because it would shut off. There's a safety feature that makes it shut off, but the metal grates are going to be hot. So obviously you don't want to touch those when the thing's on. He didn't want that to burn anything that it might land on, and so he put it on a hard surface to make it a little bit more stable, put some canvas on there so that if it did fall over, it wouldn't like set anything on fire or burn anything. I don't need it up in my tent, and frankly, with a couple of kids up there and people moving around in weird places and weird ways in the middle of the night, because kids move around a lot in the middle of the night, I didn't want to have a heater I didn't want to be bumping into any heaters in the middle of the night with their sleeping bags. So that particular night I went through 8 of those little 1-pound bottle of propane. I don't know if they're 1 bottle. I think they're 1-pound bottles of propane. And basically I had those things set up and I had them just kind of there. And then when I was running the heater on low, and then when it would run out of fuel, because it runs out of fuel after a couple of hours, I'd go down there, I'd know because we were all freezing, I'd go down there and I would plug in new tanks. And then I would go back up I'd turn it back on and go back up into the tent. The Big Buddy heater will run for approximately, with 2 of the 1-pound bottles, approximately 2 hours on high or 10 hours on low. I don't think you'll get 10 hours on low. I don't think I got 10 hours on low. Could be wrong about that. I didn't exactly test it. It says if you plug in a 20-pound bottle, you get about 100 hours on low and 20 hours on high. On the little one with just a 1-pound bottle, you get about 5 hours on low and 2 hours on high. So yeah, I'm not really sure. I wouldn't quote those numbers. I would definitely have extra if you're planning on heating a space for a long period of time. Okay, this last little section I wanted to talk about is safety. There was a couple of people that had commented on that on that vlog that, you know, CO2's the silent killer, you won't know until you're dead, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You're absolutely correct. Carbon monoxide is extremely dangerous, and it is the silent killer, and you do want to be cautious of it. But with that said, these heaters are specifically designed, and if you know anything about this, by the way, like if you actually understand the science behind it, please share with me and with others in the comments. But from what I have learned and from what the research that I've done, what I've learned from the research that I've done, is that these units produce very, very little, if any, carbon monoxide. And from what I understand, I believe that is because they burn very, very efficiently. And with that said, if they somehow begin burning inefficiently, maybe logic would say they would begin creating more carbon monoxide. The bottom line is this: if you're in like a sealed space, you know what I mean, like airtight space, I would not run one of these. I would definitely not run one of these in that space. I would definitely want to have some sort of ventilation. But the thing about running something like this in a tent is that your tent is not airtight. I didn't have the floor zipped on, so there's air coming in the bottom. The zippers and the seams, none of that stuff is airtight. Not to mention the fact that there's spaces on the side, there's spaces like that are, you know, I had like the zipper panel open so that I could have access to the side of the trailer. I mean, there's air coming in all over the place. Also, up in the tent, I have the side windows vented. I didn't have them all the way open because I didn't want it to be cold. I didn't want to lose all of the heat, but I did want to have the ability for some air to move. And the tops of the CVT tents, there's actually air vents up there specifically for, I don't know if it's specifically for the reason of heat dissipation, but for air, for the movement of air. There's little holes and nooks and crannies all over the place. This thing is not an airtight structure. Okay, so that's not a big concern of mine. Not to mention the fact that I'm not really running this thing 100% of the time, and certainly not running it on high. There's going to be fairly decent sized downtime periods where it runs out of gas, it's not running for a little while. I go down, I change the bottles out, I turn it back on. So, I mean, you know, and for running the size that I'm running and the amount of like volume in terms of airspace and stuff like that inside the tent, I don't think it's really that big of a concern. Rule number one, you do want to make sure it's vented. The other thing is that these heaters actually have an O2 sensor shutoff thingamajigger, and it's a safety mechanism, obviously. It has an O2 sensor, it detects the levels of oxygen. I believe it's 16%, don't quote me on that, but when the oxygen levels get down below a certain threshold, it shuts the unit off. And obviously the idea is behind it, it really has nothing to do with CO2 because these things aren't generating that much CO2. But if it does deplete the oxygen levels there, which is also not good for you, it'll shut the unit off so that it stops burning the oxygen because it's like a fire, right? It's going to burn the oxygen. The other thing is it has a tip over shut off thingamajigger. So if it does get knocked over in the middle of the night, it's not going to set fire to everything around you. It will tip over and it'll shut the unit off. With that said, like I had mentioned earlier, you might want to have something in front of it. So if it does tip over and it lands on something that's hot, it doesn't burn whatever it lands on that's hot because those metal grates on the front, they will get hot to the touch. The last thing that you want to do, is get a little portable, little handheld CO2 monitor thing. I got a little kitty CO2 monitor alarm thing on Amazon, and basically you just turn it on and it detects the levels of CO2. I have it, I would keep it up in the tent. Actually, for good measure, I kept it a couple of times. I've used it down by the heater, actually by the heater, like within like a few feet of the heater, because I figure if the CO2 levels are getting low there, they're probably not getting as low, you know, where we are, but that would have a higher likelihood of them being higher there and maybe give me more, you know, warning time. I don't know. But that was kind of the idea and concept behind it. It's never gone off. I've never gotten it to go off. The primary reason I decided that this was going to be a safe bet, something that was okay to use, is, I mean, I did a lot of research. I spent a lot of time reading on forums. There was a lot of people that would be like, oh, I would never use that when I'm doing something with people I'm responsible for. And then that would be like all they'd say. And then there was a ton of people that would say, I've used it for 10 years, no issue. I've used it for this, no issue. I've done this, I've done this, I've done this. There were people that come on with the science and say, this is what would have to happen in order for it to be harmful. This is what would have to happen in order for it to be harmful, blah, 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 blah. There's a million different, what I'm suggesting to you is that if this is something that you think you're interested in, do your own independent research so that you understand and know whatever risks you could be taking. I don't feel like we're taking any risks. I feel like this is a completely safe option for us to use. It says right on the outside of the box that it's safe for indoor use. I'm going to tell you this, and you're going to flame me if you're that kind of person in comments, but this is the reality of where we are today. If this was not safe for indoor use, and if people were dying from these buddy heaters, using them in their tents and whatever they're using them for, we'd know about it. And honestly, the product wouldn't be on the shelves anymore. Do you want to know why? Because we live in a social age, and it just wouldn't, if this was killing people left and right, it just wouldn't be, you'd know about it. You know what I'm saying? Like, you just know about it. If there's products out there that are killing people like that left and right, they don't last. I mean, you can't make something and people die, and it's just, it doesn't work, right? It doesn't work. It's bad business, right? The point is this. I don't mean to make light of people dying, because that's a serious thing. I've done my homework. I feel like this is a good option for heating a tent. You should do your homework. See if it's a good option for you heating your tent. I think that it works just great. The next time around, next time I use this, I'm trying to figure out a configuration for bringing a 20-pound bottle. I don't really want to put it in the trailer, certainly don't want to put it in the vehicle. Thought about strapping to the roof, and then there's complications taking it down, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I got to come up with an idea that would work. But that's kind of something I've been thinking about. I think this is a good solution. That's what we're doing. This is all the detail so that you know. And I would like to ask you, what do you do when you're camping and it's like 20 degrees outside? What do you do in the freezing cold? Or are you heating the tent, or are you doing something else? It's just let me know in comments what you do. Thanks for watching. I really, really appreciate your time. Really appreciate all the support and all the kind words that you guys say. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe. That helps show us that you support what we're doing. It shows us your support, and it's really, really appreciated. Make sure you check our merch store. We sell shirts and patches and stickers and all that cool stuff. And if there's something you'd like to see, let us know. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you come back, tell all your friends, and we'll see you in the next movie or video.